Direct Connection is made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities and is made possible by the generous support of our members. Thank you. Live from Maryland Public Television, this is Direct Connection with Jeff Salkin.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in for Direct Connection. Just hours to go in this year's session of the Maryland General Assembly. Lawmakers have approved a major overhaul of criminal sentencing while work continues on drunk driving, police accountability, worker sick leave, and tax cuts. Joining us now with their perspective, two former legislators. Rushern Baker is the Prince George's County Executive, and Alan Kittleman is the Howard County Executive. Gentlemen, thanks to both of you for being with us.
Thanks for having us. Great to be here, Jeff.
So the House is coming into session at 7:30, I understand. You were down there in the trenches in years past. Do you miss anything about this day? A lot gets done, but sometimes it's not pretty.
You know, it's a crazy day. You're in and out of the floor voting on bills. If you're in conference committee, my last 4 years down here, I was on appropriation, and so we never had the budget finished this early. And so it's great for them now. They've got it finished early, but you miss your friends, you miss the activities.
That's exactly. I feel the same way. I was just on the Senate floor for a little while and spent 10 years there, and you smell the trees blooming, and you feel the warmth in Annapolis, and you're thinking this is a perfect sunny day night. But it's great to see my friends. But I can tell you, I think that County Executive Baker would agree. We've got the best jobs in the world, though, being the executives in our respective counties.
Indeed.
Mr. Baker, let me ask you, there was a Democratic event, a number of Democratic Party leaders, county executives, mayor of Baltimore, criticizing Governor Hogan this morning. What was the focus of that?
Well, the focus of it was, for me, you know, in Prince George's County, it was about our hospital funding. The fact that we tried to work out a deal with the governor to get the money we need for the Prince George's Hospital, which is really a Maryland regional facility, and we couldn't work it out with the governor, and the governor did not step in. And the legislative body, the Senate and the House, actually passed the bill to provide that funding. Well, the other jurisdictions, you know, whether it was Montgomery County and transportation, whether it was Baltimore County and Baltimore City and Frederick County, that was the frustration of working with the governor's office and having to turn to the leadership in the House and the Senate to get things done.
The governor responded late this afternoon. He met reporters, and he said that the two biggest winners in the budget this year were Prince George's County and Baltimore City. And the quote was, "I'd prefer they just said thank you."
You know what, and we did say thank you today. We said thank you to the legislative body, which provided that funding. Yeah, we're winners. We're winners because the men and women who on the House side and the Senate side got together and made sure funding was in there for our jurisdiction. That wasn't any thanks to the governor.
For either of you, what do you think is the level of partisanship these days relative to years past?
Well, I served 10 years in the legislature, 2 years with Governor Ehrlich, 8 years with Governor O'Malley. And I can tell you, I know Governor Hogan very well, and he has really worked very well with this legislature. And I've talked to a lot of members who do feel that he's been one of the best governors they've dealt with. And I just want to talk about education as well. He has fully funded the formula for education, $6.3 billion, the highest education funding ever in the history of Maryland. And that's really important to my constituents in Howard County. It's going to help us to continue to improve our schools. And so I see a lot of ways in which the governor has been a tremendous leader. But I will tell you that happens a lot. When I was here for the first 2 years of Governor Ehrlich, when you have a supermajority of one party, they sometimes don't like the fact that the other party is in control in the executive's office. And you know, it's disappointing, but I believe the governor has done the best he could to reach out, and I'm hopeful that both sides will continue to try to work better, and maybe over the interim to continue to work well together and get ready for serving the citizens of Maryland.
Let me remind our viewers, if you have a question about Maryland politics, please give us a call. We'll have the number up on the screen. You can also tweet your questions. The Twitter address is @MPT News. So from a county level, I know the state budget has been smooth sailing this year. What does it look like in your county?
In Howard County, we will announce our operating budget on April 18th, but things are going well. We're having some moderate growth. We had a hard budget last year because when I took office, we had about a $16 million current year deficit we had to deal with. But we're doing better now. I can tell you, but one way the governor has helped us with the education funding, but also in some ways, the legislature hasn't been a great friend to counties. We had transportation funding from the Highway User Fund that was going to come to the counties, and we were going to get $1.6 million to help us. The legislature changed back to the old formulas and took all that away and went to the municipalities. Now, people might say that's a good idea. The problem is that Howard County has no municipalities. But we're still responsible for taking care of the roads of all the towns we have in Howard County. In Columbia, for example, if it was an incorporated town, it would be the second largest city in Maryland. But we, as Howard County, have to deal with those roads there. In fact, instead of $1.6 million, we're only going to get $231,000. That's where the legislature kind of hurt Howard County instead of what the governor was proposing.
So in the case of Prince George's County, we just submitted our budget for the first time since I've been county executive. This is the smallest deficit. And the reason is, one, because we have the new destination resort casino coming, but also because the state legislature, the House and the Senate, were able to get us money for education this year. They also were able, on the opposite side, of making sure that we had transportation funding that the governor left out of his budget for Prince George's County, Montgomery County, and Baltimore City. So the legislature actually saved us in the county and our budget. So, for us, this session has been good. It's been good because the legislature has come through.
How do you look at that ability of the legislature to mandate spending by passing a bill that the governor, with enough votes to override a potential veto from the governor? Would you look at it differently? You're both potential candidates for statewide office at some point. If you were the governor, would you see that issue differently?
Well, I think, and I'll let Alan talk, but I think for us in the county, you look at the critical issues we needed the funding for. That was the hospital, it was for transportation. We couldn't wait on that, and the governor's inaction forced the legislative body to take these moves.
Well, it's interesting when my good friend County Executive Baker says that in Howard County we weren't getting the funding for transportation. Now we have the governor coming to work with us to have funding to dualize part of Route 32, which is one of the most congested roadways in all of Maryland, even including the beltways. And so he really has worked to try to help us in Howard County, so I really appreciate that. But I just think it's interesting. It's almost like the Democrats in the legislature think that anytime there's a Republican elected governor, they're never going to have another Democratic governor. So we have to take away all the power we possibly can because, oh my gosh, we might have Republicans forever. I just think that's silly, and we should continue. We didn't need this whole transportation bill. The Baltimore Sun opposed the transportation bill that they forced upon the governor. It ended up being very a weak bill, but still, it just sent the message that, we just can't work with this governor. And that's unfortunate because I think the governor was elected by a lot of people in Maryland who wanted to change. He's brought change. He's very popular in Maryland. He's also popular in Howard County. So I think the governor's doing a good job, and I'm looking forward to continuing to work with him over the next 2 years to improve Howard County and Maryland. Let's
get some phone calls here. Anne Arundel County, this is William. William, thank you for the call. Go ahead.
Sir, I was wondering if the legislator is going to pass that new law named after that officer about with the DWI situation.
Yeah, Noah's Law. Thank you very much for the call. Still pending.
It's still pending.
Likely to pass, but, at the last minute, who knows?
Yeah, I saw Delegate Kramer outside before I came in here, and he's optimistic that it's going to pass, and I'm hopeful that the legislature can make it happen.
Right, and I am too. I served on judiciary as well, and I know Chairman Valerio is looking at the bill now. So we're hopeful. It's a matter of what the version of that bill will pass, but we're hopeful in our counties that we need that. At the local level, it has a terrific impact, so we need something like that.
Mr. Baker, having served on judiciary, you're both attorneys. What do you think of the Justice Sentencing Reform, the Justice Reinvestment Act that got final approval today? It was unanimous on the Senate side, I think. The governor's supportive. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's a good bill. I mean, they worked very hard on that. I know Senator Zirkin, the chairman, worked very hard on it. It's something we've been talking about for a long time, since I was here in '94 with your dad. And so to finally see this come out, I think it's been good for us.
If I can add something there too, I just want to agree with my good friend, County Executive Baker. It's a very good bill. I've worked with Senator Zirkin many years when I was in Annapolis. I think he's done a good job leading that, along with the House leaders as well. The big important part here is how the funding is going to come back, because as a local official here, I want to make sure that what we're doing is not going to be an unfunded mandate, but hopefully the state will provide the funds we need, because I think it's a great idea to go toward more treatment as opposed to incarceration for people. I think the idea is great. Let's just make sure it's implemented in a way in which it can help the counties do the job.
Right, and I echo that. I mean, that's the biggest thing for us is unfunded mandates, and I think, there's good legislation, but we want to see where the money's coming.
Also, still pending tonight, I believe, the revisions to the Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights following the Freddie Gray case last year. You both operate police departments. Your thoughts on what might change under this?
You know, for us, we're looking at, we've made changes in Prince George's County going back to when I first came in, because we had a number of problems. And so a lot of the things they're talking about, we've effectively changed in our county, which is why we don't have the problems that you see around there. So for us, we're hoping just to be able to maintain the things we're doing.
And I would agree, the same thing in Howard County. We have really reached out, done more community policing, have more bike patrols to be out there among the community members, working with the youth. We're going to have a new youth liaison with our police department coming up in next year's budget. So we're doing everything we can to reach out. I think that's also another reason why in Howard County we've had a really good relationship with the community, and hopeful that we can continue that forward.
Here's a question. As public servants, former members of the legislature, there's been talk that the sessions of the House and Senate ought to be televised or at least live streamed on the internet. Right now they're there, but it's audio only, so it's a little bit hard for people to tell who's talking. Public policy, you know, is that something you'd like to see?
I personally think it's a good idea. I will tell you, though, that I remember the days when Maryland Public Television would come in and video us for some times, and they showed at 12 o'clock at night. And I can tell you the debate on the Senate floor was very different when those cameras were on compared to when the cameras were off. There were some times when the cameras would be, when they would take them down, all of a sudden people sat down. They didn't talk as much as they did before. So I think we'd have that learning curve maybe.
Right.
But I do think it's a good thing for the citizens to see their legislators in action.
And I agree. I remember when they first started having cameras in the committee room, and people dressed better, but they spoke longer.
Yes.
But I think it's a good thing. Is transparency. People want to see that. I'd like to be able to see it, and so I think, but legislators, like anyone else, would have to get used to having the cameras there during these hearings. You know, at the local level, we do have cameras in during them, so they've gotten used to that.
So if that's ever put in, the first year it's going to be a 120-day session instead of 90, and then after that, maybe it gets back to normal. What do you make of the redistricting reform issue? Obviously, we've got some highly gerrymandered congressional districts, in particular in Maryland. It's something the governor's been pressing. It would require Democratic leadership to sort of give up a perk of power, though, so it's not gone anywhere. There's talk that maybe there's mutual disarmament between Virginia and Maryland. Does that make sense at some point?
I personally think we got to have some kind of reform, but I guess you would expect that from me as a Republican. But I think it's also, we got to be careful. A lot of times people talk about how we shouldn't give up because our congressional districts are different than maybe somewhere in the Southwest or in the West or whatever. Well, let's just look at our legislative districts. Now, no one has to be any concerned about our legislative districts other than the state of Maryland. We need to do reform in the legislative redistricting for the state delegates and state senators. That's what we need to work on as well. So we certainly could do that in Maryland without worrying about what Virginia does or any other state does. So I think it's something the citizens of Maryland want. If you look at any poll, 80% or more say that we need to have this kind of reform. I would just hope that the leadership of the legislature would work with the governor on that issue.
Well, I think the key word there is work with. I think in this case, you're going to do something like this where it really is talking about enfranchisement and de-enfranchisement. And so it requires that the legislature and the governor work together on this reform. It can't be one side dictating to the other, and I think that's what we want to see happen.
All right, we'll leave it there. Mr. Baker, Mr. Kittleman, nice to see you. Thanks very much for the time tonight.
Great to see you, Jeff. Take care.
Thanks again. Just ahead tonight, what scientists are learning about all of the bacteria inside of our bodies. We'll be right back.
Before Baltimore votes on April 26th, get answers about the city's future as MPT hosts a live Democratic mayoral debate
with the leading Democratic candidates.
Find out where the leading candidates stand at the Baltimore Democratic mayoral debate, live Tuesday night at 7 on MPT.
Tonight on MPT.
Next time on Antiques Roadshow, this is Eleanor. This is a ring with some pretty primates.
This is incredibly rare. I have never seen one like this. My other fellow appraisers have never seen one like this either. It's sort of the bee's knees. in
Or
terms
the
of
monkey's uncles.
exactly.
What's this unusual ring worth? Find out next time on Antiques Roadshow from Tucson, Arizona.
Tonight at 8 on MPT.
He wasn't just a good player, he was a superstar.
It was us against the world.
He had a kind of fury in him.
He's taking horrible abuse and death threats.
He took on everything that we were afraid to face and faced it.
We will inspire the greatest vote in the history of this nation.
He wasn't just a really good second baseman. He changed the entire country.
Tonight at 9 on MPT.
In the studio for this week's Your Health segment is Dr. Claire Frazier, Professor of Medicine and Director of the Institute for Genome Sciences at the University of Maryland School of Medicine. Doctor, thank you for being with us.
I'm delighted to be here.
We are going to talk about the gut microbiome. Didn't know I had one of those. What is it?
You do. Your gut microbiome is the collection of the trillions of microorganisms that live within your GI tract. It's estimated that there are probably 10 times the number of microbes that we each carry around with us than there are human cells. They're with us from the day we're born until the day we die. And some really exciting research from the past 10 years is beginning to shed some new light on the roles that these microbes play in maintaining health and perhaps also in being associated with various diseases.
Why are they there in the first place?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think we believe that they co-evolved with us from the time that humans first arose. In fact, you can look at almost any species of life on Earth and find associated microbes. They've evolved to carry out some important functions. They help us to digest our food, they synthesize vitamins, they help to educate and maintain our immune system, and one of the most important roles is to probably protect us from disease.
So if we didn't have all of these bacteria, if somebody were totally sterile somehow, it wouldn't work?
We wouldn't be as healthy as we are. It's interesting, there are some germ-free mouse models where there's a lot of work that's been done, and that's provided some interesting information to help us try and figure out what these microbes do. These germ-free mice, they're alive, but I wouldn't say that they're healthy.
So what have you learned in recent years about the microbiome, the signaling that goes back and forth, perhaps?
Well, I think one way to think about this is to consider us and our associated microbial partners as an ecosystem. And if you were asked somebody to think about an ecosystem, they'd probably think of the rainforest or a coral reef. But all those same principles are at work within our bodies. These communities represent interdependent organisms. They work together to make us healthy. They signal to us, we signal to them. And like any ecosystem, it's very possible for this to get out of balance.
When you walk down the yogurt aisle in the grocery store, there's stuff that says it has probiotics. Mm-hmm. Is that related?
It is related. Probiotic organisms originated from the GI tract. Their primary use in foods is to ferment milk, to turn milk into yogurt, but it's also thought that at least certain probiotic organisms that can survive transit through the harsh conditions in the stomach and the small intestine also play beneficial roles in promoting health.
So that didn't sound like a total endorsement or saying that you should stay away from this stuff.
Well, actually, that's not true, because a big part of my research program is trying to apply current state-of-the-art methods to better understand whether and how probiotics have an effect. Probiotics have been around for hundreds of years. They've been studied for a long time, but I wouldn't say that the science behind probiotics is particularly strong. But we have a new set of tools, and there seems to be a renewed interest in looking at probiotics in the context of the microbiome today.
What's the most exciting area of research at the moment?
Well, I think in the probiotic field, we're starting to see that these probiotics can work a couple of different ways. They can benefit us directly, but they can also have effects by modulating the activity of all the resident microbes that live in our GI tract. Another important insight that has come just recently is the idea not surprisingly, that no single probiotic will have the same effect in everybody. It's not really what food companies want to hear, but for us as consumers, if we can figure out that probiotic X will do a better job for us than probiotic Y, then we can be a little bit more confident that when we go and we purchase these kinds of foods that we're really spending our money wisely.
Let's take a phone call. Anne Arundel County, this is George. George, thank you for the call. Go ahead.
Thank you. Hey, I'm wondering, since there's good and bad bacteria, whether they're easily differentiated, let's say, in a microscope, and how they look different from each other.
Interesting question. It's not so easy to distinguish good from bad bacteria in the microscope, but we can certainly do that with a much higher degree of resolution with current molecular and genomics techniques.
Is there a connection between the bacteria and somebody's weight? Is there a potential weight loss silver bullet in here somewhere?
It's a really interesting question, and I think it's probably a topic in the microbiome field that has generated more interest on the part of the public than anything that I've seen. This idea that our gut microbes could be linked to weight came out of some fantastic studies from Dr. Jeff Gordon's lab at Washington University in St. Louis about 10 years ago. He began his work looking at mice and demonstrated that there were different sets of microbes in obese mice versus lean mice. Studies in mice don't always translate readily to studies in humans, and I would say the results in humans have been mixed, and it's not for lack of trying to find a connection. But I think the jury's still out on whether and how gut microbes may influence body weight. But obesity is a complex disorder. It involves genetics and environment, and I think it's unrealistic to believe that we're going to find a simple, single solution.
Let's take a phone call. Baltimore City, this is Mary. Mary, thank you for the call. Go ahead.
Oh, hey, you always hear about how E. coli can be dangerous on like raw chicken and stuff. But I thought that E. coli also was like one of the major important bacteria in our gut. So
Mary, great question. Thank you.
That is a great question, Mary, and you're absolutely right. E. coli can be one of the most dangerous sources of food poisoning, but it's also found as a typical resident in the GI tract. And this inconsistency can be explained by the fact that there are many, many different strains of E. coli. Some of them are more likely to cause disease than others. So the E. coli that typically live in the human GI tract doesn't necessarily cause disease, but E. coli are everywhere, and they can pick up all sorts of genes that can turn a fairly harmless E. coli into a dangerous food or waterborne pathogen.
What happens when we take antibiotics? Somebody say they have a legitimate infection, bacterial infection, they take a round of strong antibiotics. The microbiome must be affected.
Yeah, another great question, and I think this is one of the most important insights to come from our study of the microbiome. I think it's important just to make clear that everybody understands that when antibiotics are medically indicated for treating a bacterial infection, they're absolutely essential. But we are exposed to unnecessary antibiotics, either when we go to the doctor and ask for a prescription at the first sign of an upper respiratory infection. We're also exposed to lots of antibiotics in our food supply. And antibiotics in the context of the microbiome are probably equivalent to dropping a nuclear bomb. Every time we're exposed to antibiotics, not only do we kill off the disease-causing bacteria, but we have an impact on these beneficial bacteria.
Now I go eat some yogurt at that point. Does that help at all?
It certainly helps, but it's not necessarily going to restore your microbiome to what it was prior to taking the antibiotic. And again, going back to this notion of ecosystems, ecosystems can sustain certain assaults, but there can come a time with an ecosystem where you can have a straw that breaks the camel's back scenario. And unfortunately, we don't know when that's likely to occur. So I think probably the best advice when it comes to antibiotics is avoid them unless absolutely necessary.
Dr. Claire Frazier with the University of Maryland School of Medicine, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Direct Connection. We're back Thursday with Your Money in Business. Have a good night.
Your health segments are a co-production of Maryland Public Television and the University of Maryland Medical System.
This program was made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities.